Film genre, coming of age. Films, Juno and Mustang. Topic: to what extent do coming-of-age films differ in their representations of adolescence according to the cultural context? Coming-of-age films are ones that typically focus on a character's transition between two different periods of their life. This transition is usually between their teenage years and adulthood. Common conventions of this genre include, but are not limited to, the films taking place in a short time period, like a summer which is only about 3 months, a protagonist's internal struggle, and some sort of romance. The two films I will be comparing and contrasting are Juno and Mustang. Juno is a movie about a 16-year-old girl, Juno, who gets pregnant after impulsively deciding to have sex with her best friend. The movie follows her through pregnancy and the struggle to accept family and cultural values that she has rejected her entire life. Mustang, on the other hand, follows 5 Turkish orphan girls under the strict parenting of their grandmother and uncle. The movie shares their experience with arranged marriage, consequences of interacting with boys, and the suppressing of kids' suffering in a conservative Middle Eastern context. So, to what extent do coming-of-age films differ in their representation of adolescence according to cultural context? First, let's look at the cultural context of each film. The cultural context of Mustang is as follows. Economically, the family of the protagonist is around lower class. This is evident in the fact that their family has 1 car, and the grandmother sews the girls' clothes rather than buying it, and they live in a very rural area. Geographically, the film takes place in Turkey. This is evident in the language of the film and the location of the shots. Socially, we see strict conservative interactions between different genders. Juno's is as follows. Economically, Juno's family is also portrayed as lower on the economic scale, as Juno drives an old beat-up van and emphasizes her need to have adoptive parents that will pay for her medical bills. Geographically, the movie takes place in the US, and finally, we see a very socially careless society in Juno. In regards to the differences of representation, the adolescents in both movies have a rebellious nature. Both Juno and Lale defy societal expectations. In other words, Mustang and Juno are similar in the sense that throughout both movies, the protagonists resist their cultural values and don't accept them. In Mustang, Lale breaks several cultural norms, such as acting unfeminine, being disobedient to elders, spending time with boys, sneaking out, and so much more. Lale rejects all the constraints and values that her grandmother and uncle's conservative parenting tried to instill in her, so much to the point where, in the end of the movie, she escapes from them and runs away to Istanbul, which is a symbol of liberalism and freedom, and goes off to live with her young Western teacher. The director of Mustang emphasizes mise-en-scène when creating this effect. For example, the mise-en-scène of the house she's trapped in is very rural and poor. The mise-en-scène of the Istanbul montage, however, is not. We see a beautiful city with an even better looking view in the Istanbul montage. They create this big difference in order to emphasize the differences between the strict rule of her guardians and life in Istanbul. In Juno, the protagonist breaks social norms and rejects cultural values too. She impulsively chooses to have sex with her best friend and gets pregnant at 16. This is against typical American values. They do differ, however, in their endings. Lale doesn't accept her cultural values and runs away to freedom, when Juno, on the other hand, admits her love for Bleecker, her best friend, and embraces cultural values that she and her family structure seem to reject throughout the film. This is a big change in Juno's mindset since the beginning of the movie, and the director emphasizes this, also using filmic devices like color and mise-en-scène. The entire movie is dark, but at the end, once she accepts the cultural values and embraces them, the film's color palette changes significantly to much brighter colors. In conclusion, when comparing Juno and Mustang, the films don't differ much in their representations of adolescence according to cultural context. The adolescents in both are rebellious and rejecting of their cultural values. The only place they differ thematically is that in Juno, she eventually accepts the values, while Lale runs away from them.